All right, so as you saw in the little clip there, had an unfortunate situation with my drone. I did find it. It sat out there for just shy of a month. I think about 4 days shy of a month. My initial intent was to get another drone, borrow one from a buddy, or get a replacement in the event I didn't find this one, and because it was up there pretty dang high in a pretty challenging landscape, which I'm sure you can tell by the video. I was able to, I got another drone. I flew it in the area and tried to put it in the general GPS coordinates of my previous flight plan. And again, I was fortunate enough that I could look at my flight history, follow the path of the drone, and then see where the last GPS coordinates, known GPS coordinates were of it before it hit the obstacle. And the reason it hit the obstacle, I'm guessing, is because I have flown similarly many, many times before and had no issues. You know, the sensors would kick in and, you know, warn you like they do and just stop the drone from flying into that obstacle. Well, as you saw in the video, that didn't happen. It just went right into it. And I just stood there with my jaw agape looking at the video going, oh no. So the second drone didn't really help me much because they're so dense with trees and very steep landscape, you know, cliffs and so forth, and it wasn't happening. So I took those coordinates off there and I grabbed I have a handheld but didn't have it handy at the time. So I grabbed the GPS out of my motorhome and put it in a mode that allows me to put in manual coordinates. I did so, and I walked to the nearest place where I had last known or had contact with it. I went up this Billy Goat Trail the night that I lost it, or the evening I lost it. And there was a point that I got to on that trail where if I went a little bit farther, I would lose signal. And if I'd go back, I would regain signal. And then after a short while, then the battery just died. And that was that. So I got back to that point with the handheld. It said I was within 80 feet of the drone. And then that battery died in the GPS. So I just started going straight up, crawling on my belly underneath trees and bushes and to the general area that made sense for it to be in that area. I'm like, okay, what's the leading edge of this altitude up here where it would likely have hit something? And I just kept walking around and walking around, and then I got to a point where I was ready to throw in the towel. I had resigned to the fact that I'm going to have to just come back here tomorrow. I'm going to see if I can solicit someone else I know with a drone maybe we can tag team this thing and find it. I have a hard time letting go of stuff when I lose it. Can you tell? So I was very persistent, and it paid off, and typically does. So I was ready to resign for the afternoon. I was negotiating my next step to get myself back down safely, and I looked down, and it was right at, I'm not kidding you, 2 feet away from me, in front of me, on the ground. And I'll show you that picture. That's when I found it, and then I looked up from there and took another picture with my phone. You can see how thick the trees were there. I mean, it just hit in there. And again, the reason that it did do that, in my opinion anyways, is this happened to me one other time, not a crash, but another time where my sensors I sensed were not working as well as they should have and not reacting the way I should have. And I noticed, and I think when I put my controller in and out of the storage bag, that I may trip that trigger, you know, from TPS to a mode that, you know, takes the sensors off, and maybe sport mode. I'd have to review all those, don't quote me on that, but into a mode that disabled the sensors. And that's what caused it to not react the way I expected it to, and potential loss of a drone. Anyway, so I found it, I got it back. I thought to myself, I'm just going to be disciplined, and I'm not going to test this thing for a while. It's almost a month. it's been about 3 weeks. And it's been in a very dry area. I even toyed with the idea of sticking it in a bag of rice like people always do with their cell phones. I'm like, I'm just gonna leave it. So I pulled the battery out. First thing I did, pulled the memory card out, and my footage was still there. That was a good sign, so the memory card didn't get fried. Pulled the battery out, and the battery bay in here had quite a bit of water pooling in it, and the battery was wet. It was a little wet still. It was sunny the day I found it, but I'll tell you what, from the time that I lost it until the time I found it, it had rained heavy and quite a bit. At one point for about a week. Sorry, that was my remote. I have my remote on. It was going to time out on me. So it had rained for about a week. So memory card worked, battery recharged just fine. So those are good indications and raised my optimism right out of the chute that it was going to be okay. My battery died also, obviously because it was after it crashed, it stayed on and the battery died. And that probably had, some to do with what will hopefully be a good outcome here. I'm going to test it for the first time right now. I'm going to stick the battery in and I'm going to try to turn it on and I'm going to see what happens here. I need to take the gimbal cover off there. So I'm kind of nervous because it's going to be what it's going to be, but I'll tell you what, if it works, I'm going to be a really happy boy, and then I got a backup drone, and that's never bad. And, well, I'm just going to do it. I'm kind of nervous, but we'll see what happens. Holy cow. Good deal. And again, I let it dry out for a long time. It's doing everything that you would expect it to. God, that's good deal. Happy about that. Now I have my remote. I have my remote set up for my new drone, so I need to pair this with it to see that if the remote's going to work or anything. But I guess you probably want to see that, but I'm confident it's going to work. The fact that it fired up and the lights are all blinking and the props did their prep work, and let me see what I can. See if I can, I gotta remember which hatch the pairing button is under. I think it's on this side. Yeah. So let me see if I can press that. I'm reading the directions on the thing, I apologize. It linked. The thing linked. Connection successful. Holy cow. Always in hindsight, you're like, oh man, I could have saved all that money on another drone. But had I not found this and had it not worked, I'm back in the game with the second drone anyways. And there was no guarantee, as dangerously optimistic as I was about finding this, there was no guarantee I was going to get it back. So I had a few things pending where I needed to have a drone. So all of that in mind, I needed to get one. And this one might not have worked, and now I just fired it up and it's working. So I'm going to see what happens when I hit the go fly button. It's telling me it's all ready. There you go. I'm going to back up the camera here a little bit. I'm just going to see what happens if I try to just fire it up, just to make sure that it's working, Wow, I'm blown away that it's working. That's spectacular. Anyways, if you've lost your drone and I hope you have the same luck, first of all, but a few things you got to think about. One, did it get wet while it was out there? Did you still have a good battery charge on it? And I didn't know this at first. I only learned this from asking the question of a guy at DJI, one of the authorized dealers. I said, is there a way I can go into my flight history and he goes, oh, absolutely, assuming you had GPS there. And my first thought was, I bet I didn't, because I'm in the middle of Alaska somewhere, high canyon walls in the middle of the canyon, and I was pretty skeptical that I had a good GPS signal there, if at all. And when I went into my flight history, I was able to track that. I looked at the date, I knew the date I crashed, and obviously there were no flights after that, so it was the last flight. And I just hit play and watched that, and you can, speed it up to the end of the flight. And then when I saw the end of the flight, and I looked in I think it was the bottom left corner of my screen, it showed the GPS coordinates, and I was off and running. And like it took me a few hours to find it, and some crazy climbing and hiking and crawling, and I ate wild blueberries while I was out there, so that was redeeming. But and finding my drone was the most redeeming of it all. So the one thing I recommend, if you do find one, be patient and make sure you let the thing dry out, because there would be nothing more disappointing than, I've watched a couple of videos of guys, before I recovered mine, I was just fishing for ideas and pointers and stuff, and I watched a couple of videos of guys where, they put it on the dashboard of their truck and put the heat on high for like an hour, and then they tested it, and I might be a little off on the hour, but I felt they were being a little impatient. I thought, you know what, you have more to lose by rushing it than just waiting. At least let the thing sit in the sun, for a few days. And I waited 3 weeks, but again, I had a secondary drone, so. And these guys were on some exotic locales that they probably were anxious, but they ended up without a drone anyways, so should have waited. I don't know that they would have had a different outcome, but theirs had fallen in a river and stuff. But this thing got rained on hard for a few weeks. And that part of Alaska has, I think, one of the largest snowfalls in the winter being a good chunk of the year, and one of the heaviest rainfalls, on record, in that area. Down towards Valdez, if that means anything to, it probably means something to a lot of people, but not everybody's aware of the precipitation there. It's pretty heavy. So I'm grateful that this thing is working, and man, I guess that's pretty much all I can tell you. And again, I hope you have the same kind of luck, and hope this was helpful to some of you. And again, good luck finding yours if it's lost, and resurrecting it if there's any hope. So I think I got lucky. I don't mean to put false hope in anybody's mind, but if what I learned from my experience in any way helps the outcome of you finding yours, I hope that's the case. So just thought I'd share that. And I kind of had one shot at firing this thing up, so I thought I would record that and see how that went. And I'm very happy. So moving on. Got to go out and get some pictures and stuff now. Get this thing back in the air. Have a good one. We'll see you on the next one.